I want to first start off by thanking Brent and Dave for asking me to do this. It's quite an honor, and I really appreciate Dave's patience with me, because when he told me about this, all my presentation was in slides. And slides are a technology that apparently has gone away. I was at a meeting up in Eagle Butte giving a presentation, and of course I travel with my own slide projector now because nobody has them. And I set it up, and this 20-year-old kid came up to me and he goes, "What's that?" "It's a slide projector." He was amazed to watch it move. He just stood there and went, "Wow." Well, that's what I grew up with. Anyway, it took me a while to get this together, and I was probably the last one to get it to Dave. I made him sweat right till the end. So, oh, well, good. Again, my name is Todd Mortensen. I'm a third-generation rancher from South Dakota. This is where the ranch is located. Pier is down over here. The ranch is in this watershed right up there. This is the Missouri River. This is the Cheyenne River arm of the Missouri River. The Wahi Dam is right about, must be right about there. So, the family has been there since the 1940s. Actually, in the 30s, my grandpa started putting it together. He was a World War I vet, and he lost his leg in World War I. And as a result of that, well, I shouldn't say as a result of it, he always wanted a ranch, and he lost his leg, so he got a benefit every month, a disability check. Plus, he worked for the county as a treasurer. So he had a job through the 30s, which was very important. He had a job, and then he got the benefits. And he put the ranch together by paying the tax liens. And it's in the very northwest corner of Stanley County. At the time he put it together, there was a river bottom. Lake Oahe hadn't been built yet. And so we had plenty of protection, and then we had the uplands also. And of all the places in Stanley County that he could have put together, he chose this one. And so it's I'd like to be able to talk to him. He died in 1967. And I'd like to be able to talk to him and ask him what he saw that made him stop here. But it's quite a story for a guy with one leg to start a cattle ranch, and he raised Hereford cattle, sold Hereford bulls, was known throughout the country for the quality of bulls that he had. We own the lower third of this watershed. This upper stuff is, there's two neighbors that own this upper part. So we just control basically from here on around. This is an aerial view from the east looking back to the west. Again, this is the Oahe Reservoir, the Cheyenne River arm of it, and there's the Cheyenne River. This is what they call Todd's Draw. It didn't have a name until they started doing research on the ranch, and then they needed a name, and since I live on it, they named it Todd's Draw, so I'm on the map now. And here's Foster Creek. We've done a lot of restoration on Foster Creek as well as Todd's Draw. The fields that you see, the majority of those have been planted back to grass. I'm not much of a farmer. I'm probably the world's worst farmer, and I realize that, and it doesn't bother me. So I plant it back to grass, grass and alfalfa, generally native grasses. This is a view of the ranch again, obviously. After the snow went off in 1978, you can see a lot of lake beds. But these are the structures, I guess, I want you to kind of take note of. Those are spreader dikes, and they're gated, meaning that there's a culvert through them with a gate on it. You can open up, close the gates as you want to drain these. These drain into this dam. And above these, you see water running in from here. There's a big dike up here that catches the water and takes it over here and drops it down into these. And then these spill into this dam, and this dam drains down here. Same with this one. There's a big dike up here. Spreads the water over down to here, and it catches in these. Now, the reason Dad built those is because when he first came to the place, there were very few dams, number one, and you'd get a rainfall, and all the water would run off. You'd get an inch of rain, and it would just, he said this creek would roar for a couple hours, and then it'd be done. And then you'd need a rain again. Now, this land wasn't always like that. this place had, in the 1910 census, on the map, there were over 36 different ownerships on this land from the Homestead Act, where everybody got 160 acres. So this thing was divided up huge, just way too much, in an area that gets 16 inches of annual rainfall. So the settlers had a huge impact on this area. Took all the wood off, overgrazed it, and they didn't do it on, for spite. They did it, they were trying to make a living. That worked in Illinois, Iowa, Minnesota, the Homestead Act did, but in South Dakota, especially West River, South Dakota, it was a recipe for disaster. And the first disaster that struck was after World War I, when the price of commodities went in the tank. So a lot of them left in the early 1920s. And then, of course, the 1930s came along and took out the rest of them, all but a very few. Now, my grandpa, the original quarter that he had is what we call the spring draw, and it's a quarter with the spring that we have water piped to the whole ranch on. But it's kind of interesting that he was able to survive that, and he had the only source of water on the ranch. So Dad came along in the mid-40s, took over the ranch in 1951. And of course, we still had the river bottom at that time. So he didn't need to do much on the uplands other than try to start, conserving a little bit of water. I'm going to back up again from the homestead days and go back to the days when the trappers came in, because Fort Pierre was the American Fur Company was headquartered in Fort Pierre for a while. And what were they doing? They were exporting beaver pelts to Russia. And so the trappers came in and trapped all these beavers out. So that was, think of a three-legged stool. First of all, the beavers get trapped out. What did the beavers do? The beavers built dams. Yeah, they cut trees down, but you know what? Those draws and along the river especially were loaded with trees. So the beavers had a net positive effect. So one leg was taken out when the beavers were trapped out. Then the homesteaders came in and took the trees out, overgrazed, and this is what you had. That Todd's draw was a 6 to 8 foot steep-sided wash. Foster Creek was 8 to 10 foot wash. And there weren't any trees. There's been a lot of research done on the ranch by the college, and when I mention the college, it's SDSU out of Brookings. But they did core samples on trees. The oldest trees that they found on the place were from 1936, right in the middle of the drought. But something, there weren't any people left. The people had all left. So the trees were able to start even in the middle of a drought. This is Foster Creek. The beaver have come back. Now, I've got a love-hate relationship with beaver. I love them that they build dams. They build dams just everywhere. I hate them because they cut the trees down, and we're still trying to get trees started. And you can see some here. There's some willows getting started here in the background. So, we've restored one of the legs of the stool. Here again is a beaver dam surrounded by willow. And this is in Foster Creek. This is a wash that was, 8 to 10 foot deep, straight-sided. You had to find a place. You really had to hunt to find a place to cross it horseback. And if it rained, you just didn't cross it. Now you can cross it virtually anywhere that the beavers haven't built a dam. We also built dams on Foster Creek and in Todd's Draw. This is a picture of a dam, and this dam is about 6 months old in this picture. And it was built to catch sediment, and boy, did it ever. We had a big rain up in the basin, about a 4.5 inch rain over an hour and a half, and it filled this dam with mud. Now, why did we do that? Well, we wanted trees to get started because trees weren't growing in this draw. It was healing up, but the trees weren't coming. So we needed to stop the mud to get the cottonwoods and the willows to start. This is a picture 2 years later, and I got to apologize for the quality. It's from a slide, and the slide was blurry, and apparently with today's technology, they can't take the blur out of slides either. But there's a lot of trees right in there, cottonwoods and willows. And that beaver dam that I showed you before is just off the frame here, just back up in here. So this is, how quickly Mother Nature will repair itself given the right, given the chance to do it. It wasn't destroyed overnight, certainly, or degraded overnight, and you can't put it back together overnight. It takes a lot of patience. And the best way to look at it is take pictures of it and then look back at them every once in a while so you can see the change. Otherwise, you think, well, nothing's happening. It doesn't change, but it really does. This is an interesting slide. If velocity of a stream can be reduced by 1/2, the abrasive power will reduce 4 times, silt carrying capacity 32 times, and the ability to transport large objects 64 times. This is a fence line contrast. This pasture back over here is season-long grazed. And look at the size of some of these cannonballs. And what these are is like a snowball that you start and you roll from the top of the hill and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. That's exactly what these are. These start out as a little rock or a little mud ball, and they roll and roll and roll and get bigger and bigger. This is our fence line this is our land back over in here. You can see where it hits the fence line, all of a sudden it's getting into vegetation. So what's that doing? It's stopping, or at least slowing the water down. And when that water slows down, going back to that last slide, what does it do? It loses its ability to carry these huge objects. We picked one of these up, my brother and I, took 2 of us, and it weighed 280 pounds. We took it up to the house, put it on our scale, 280 pounds. Now that's a lot of force, and that's going to carry a lot of soil. What we're doing on Foster Creek is we're stopping that mud that's washing in, and it's building the bottom of that creek up. Now, like I say, you can cross Foster Creek virtually any place along its length, and it wasn't like that 35 years ago. And 15 years ago, you had to be careful you didn't get bogged in the mud. And now the mud is solidified enough where you can cross it, like I say, virtually anywhere. But you can see all the vegetation that's growing in there. That's a picture of my dad. He's not a tall man. He's probably 5'8", but this is cordgrass growing up over the top of him, right in the bottom of the creek. Now that cordgrass makes great protection also for the cattle during the wintertime, because we are a cow-calf operation in South Dakota. I calve in March and April. This protection is really appreciated. The cows enjoy it during the wintertime. Say I'm down in there in January. It's like a super Serta mattress. They'll go down in there and they'll lay on that stuff. And it doesn't bother me that they lay on it, because whether it's standing or laying down, it's doing the same thing. It's protecting the soil, and it's stopping, slowing down, spreading out the water so it drops its sediment load. Again, this is Todd's draw, water running through it, and it's running through vegetation the whole way. These are ash trees. We've got a lot of ash trees. We're getting more cottonwoods all the time, more willows, hackberries. We're kind of worried about our ash tree population due to the green ash borer or something that's in Minnesota, and it's headed our way, and it's probably just a matter of time. So we like to get more diversity in the tree population. There's been a lot of research done on the ranch. This is a water gauge deal that was set up, and it collects in these bottles at different stages as the creek comes up. And this would be a foot or so. It would collect in the bottle, and if it went up here, it would collect more. And what they found out by doing this research is that the water coming onto the place is cleaner. The water leaving the place is cleaner than the water that's coming onto the place. And I used to have some bottles that gave great example of it. But one of them, I don't know whether somebody opened it or what, but it turned green on me. And this was after about 5 years, so it must have got a leak in the cap or something. But anyway, we're very proud of that fact, that we can take the water and clean it up before it dumps into the Cheyenne River or into Lake Oahe. Because I didn't tell you what I should have told you when I showed you those aerial views, is Lake Oahe now is a big mud flat on the Cheyenne River arm where I live. Instead of water being there, there's 35 to 40 foot of sediment out there. The tribe did some research because they were going to sue the government over mercury from the tailings out of Homestake. So they took some borers out there and bored down to the original, down to the original channel. 35 to 40 foot of mud. Lake Oahe was closed in 1950, I believe it was 58 or 59. We had water backed up on our place by 62. So basically, in, what, 50 years? Actually, the drilling they did was 40 years. So 40 years, 35 foot of mud. That's a lot of mud. On Foster Creek, we're seeing the same kind of deposition. We're getting, in a wet year, we'll get a foot to a foot and a half of deposition in the bottom of Foster Creek. Now, that's not going to continue because we've basically got the bottom filled up now. But I guess it just won't be as concentrated. It'll still spread that same mud out. It'll just spread it out over the entire drainage area.
Todd, we're going to give you the 5-minute warning here.
Oh, I better hurry. I give this presentation quite a bit, and it varies in length, and I can talk about the ranch all day. Here's Todd's draw, the water from it, blending with the Foster Creek, the water out of Foster Creek. You can see how clean that is. We're very proud of that. We live on that creek, on this creek, and we're trying to get this creek to the same point. We control all the watershed on Todd's Creek, so we can control what the runoff is there. We control the lower third of this one, so we can extract a lot of mud out of this one, but we can't control it the way we can the water from there. So in 1987, I was introduced to holistic resource management, again through a tribal project. They needed cows, I needed some grass, and they said, do you mind if we experiment with your cows? And I said, no, absolutely not. And then I found out what they were going to do with my cows, and I got a little bit concerned, but it was all good. It was a very intense learning experience, I guess. They used the cows and they'd bunch them in the corners where they had brush problems, and they'd beat the heck out of the brush and leave the cows there for a day, and I'd go, what are you guys doing? Well, we're killing the brush. Well, yeah, you're starving my cows, though. But long story short, it worked. I started in 1988, 89, and 90. I took holistic management courses and found out what it was all about. And now the ranch is managed holistically. It's managed for the cattle, because that's what we use to harvest the grass, and it's managed for the wildlife. That's a baby curlew. And I'm probably most proud of that accomplishment, of the wildlife that's on the ranch, the birds. We've got bobcats there. Until a couple of years ago, I'd never seen a bobcat. I knew they were around, but I'd never seen one. Now we've got video of them with a mother bobcat with 5 kits following her, right in the yard at home. Now the yard at home is a big tree patch around it, so it's really dense, kind of forested area. But that bobcat looked at us and just, like we were no biggie. She'd probably been watching us for years. We just never seen her. But the game warden, I told him about it, and he goes, you don't know how rare that is, especially to have 5 kits. He said 2 or 3 in the wild is not uncommon, but he said 5 is pretty rare. We don't have a rabbit problem. And we've got one barn cat that lives on the deck of the house. And he's been there for about 8 years now. And every time another cat will come up, because cats show up every once in a while, they last 3 to 6 months, and then the bobcat kills them. The bobcat kills them because they're competition. This is what the game warden told me. And they don't eat them, they just kill them. They just grab them behind the neck, snap their neck, and leave them lay. Which, I don't know, if you're a cat lover, you don't want to give me a cat. Because I can't guarantee its longevity. I better get going. This is an area, this is my house up there, and this area gets used heavily in the spring because it's got protection. So we'll come in there, we'll use it pretty extensively. This is what it looks like. This is on the other side of the draw looking back the other way. This is what it looks like. We don't go back in there, we don't, it didn't look very good there in the spring, but that's how it looks. And remember what the water looked like running out of there. It's clean. We built, we've got dams on it, and the bottom of the draw is completely healed. There's no deposition taking place on this. They did the research with the bottles, and there's just virtually no mud running down that, or getting to the end anyway. And this is a view from my porch, or from my deck. And I look around and I don't see any neighbors. My nearest neighbor is 4 miles away, and I like my neighbors, but I don't want to look at them. And so I don't have to. And it's something that people come out there, they're really amazed. They look at, and they're either in shock, where are all the people, or they're in awe. Wow, this is really beautiful. And it's a beautiful ranch. It's been in the family, like say, 3 generations, and hopefully it'll be in the family a lot more generations. I've got 2 boys, and hopefully they'll be interested enough to come back and continue on with what we've been doing. Thank you very much.